We had a treasurer's report. We didn't have any minutes in there, so if anybody's got any questions or concerns about the treasurer's report, put that in the chat box. Otherwise, let's move on. Carla sent out a invitation to a Wednesday lunch and learn meeting that's next week on January 20th. If you can tear yourself away from the inauguration, I would encourage you to do that. It's going to be connecting with your yard birds. I guess it'll have some theme music like For Your Love or Heart Full of Soul, but at any rate, I would encourage you to.
Free bird.
Oh, no.
Now let's go back to the old musical group, the Yardbirds. There were some great guitarists in there.
Yardbirds.
Also, hopefully you saw the letter from Natalie. There's some signups that you can make for Friday Focus meeting. That's once a month on Friday. There's also, apparently some of the months are doing it on Thursday. There's a Thursday Focus. I would encourage you to do those. I did several of them this past year, and they were quite good. Also, our dues are due. You need $20. Send it to Carla. The address is on your invitation. And with that, Carla, unless there's something else, I'll turn it over to you and let you introduce David. And David, I do appreciate this.
You bet.
Okay, yes. And as far as the dues checks, they have been coming into the office. I have been receiving those. I just wait and I gather up a pack, and I've been mailing them to our treasurer. And I have some today that I need to get to her. So, don't fret about that. We are receiving them. It's just been our schedule here lately that I'm not out at the office all the time. We've gone back to that alternative phase where I am in the office one week and then the next week I am out. And so I schedule meetings, where I don't have to go to the office. So, and that is just to reduce our own COVID risk for having all the staff together and in and out at one time. So, and I do want to let you all know that there was an opportunity to do a spring class with Natalie Bumgarner, but I really, with my other responsibilities, I just do not have time this spring to set that up and be committed to every Tuesday morning to be in a Master Gardener meeting. It would be like having 2 classes a year because I plan mine for in the fall. So I just kind of wanted to explain that to everybody. I thought at first it would be an opportunity where you all could just go and join that meeting, but it actually requires my presence, and I'm having a hard time duplicating myself. And I will have another commitment on Tuesdays so it just kept me from doing a spring Master Gardener class. So we'll do ours in the fall. I mean, hopefully we can do it in person by the time August rolls around, August and September. So we will not do a spring class, but we will do a fall class. So if you get asked by anybody, in the process of updating the Montgomery County website, our extension website, and my horticulture page, UT has updated their entire website. And so there's a lot of information that I've got to put back on my site, like links to the interest forms and links to our Wacky Wednesdays and things like that. So it's just going to take some time for me to get those things in order and get them back up online and everything. So, okay, without further ado, I will check the chat box and answer your questions here in just a second. But we are so pleased to have David Cook with us tonight. David is an extension agent, horticulture agent in Davidson County. And so he does what I do, but he has about 10 times the audience, 10 times the size.
Sometimes that's a burden too.
David, we know you're a very, very busy man, and we surely appreciate your time tonight. And I will go ahead and turn it over to you, and you can talk to us about the beneficials.
Okay. Also, I ought to come up with a door prize for this question. It has nothing to do with insects. That program you're talking about, yard birds, and then was that Roger that mentioned the musical group, that band, the Yardbirds? A lot of you may, if you're my age, you probably know them. That's one of my favorite bands. But if you could name the three of the greatest rock and roll and rock guitar players that were in that band as lead guitar players, I'll come up with a door prize.
Jeff Beck,
Jimmy Page,
Jimmy Page, and
Eric Clapton.
That's it. Okay, Carly, you have to give them.
Oh, I think that was Ray Wheeler that got it.
That was amazing. That was incredible. But they were really ahead of their time, way ahead of their time. So so let's we'll change the subject now. But I'm bigger. If you could ever see any of the, I'd never seen the Yardbirds when I was younger, but I did see Jeff Beck play one time, and he's regarded as one of the best guitar players. He can play so many styles. It's unbelievable. Okay, so let's look at some what I call our rock idols in the insect world, maybe. Some of these are going to be some strange photos you might see. So I'm going to buzz along in these things, and I'm going to be interactive. I'm going to ask some questions too. There are a lot of insects. Generally, you can consider insects beneficial. Most people regard them as a pest, probably, without even knowing the type of insect they're seeing. But some are I just call innocent bystanders. But the amazing thing is that, I mean, the sad thing is that insects globally on a serious decline globally, not just in Davidson County, Montgomery County, and Tennessee, or United States, North America, but globally. And it is a scientific fact that if the insect population dies off, soon to follow would be the human population. We're very dependent on these insects for our plant communities to exist, and a lot of our food, the majority of our food we eat, we have to have these insects. We do benefit from insects that get their protein from actually eating other insects. So insects, they're remarkable. There's incredible diversity in them. So I'm trying to move it. Okay. And one thing about Tennessee, most states don't have 4 state insects, but Tennessee does. Does everybody know all these right here? So we on the top left, everybody should know that is a ladybug or lady beetle. It actually is a beetle. It's not a true bug. Top right one is obviously it's a non-native, but it's an introduced species from Europe. It's a honeybee. The bottom left is a firefly or lightning bug, and that's really not a good name for it because a lightning bug is actually a beetle, a soft-winged beetle or leather-winged beetle, we call it. And we're going to see a little more detail about these. Then this beautiful butterfly, which is really kind of rarely seen, is a swallowtail, and because of its black and white color, it is called a zebra swallowtail. But the female is very finicky. She will only lay eggs on pawpaw trees, which is a native tree, and that's what the caterpillars feed on. So if we look at lady beetles, they come in a variety of colors, mainly the really bright colors, reds, kind of yellow orange. Some of them are pink. They have a variety of spots. They may not have any spots. Some are really ornate. There's one called a calligraphy beetle. And calligraphy is a form of really fancy writing. I mean, really fancy writing. And you'll have to look up calligraphy beetle. And the design on their wing cover is so ornate, but they're not red, and they're not yellow or orange. They're a brown, a tan, or black. So if someone saw these beetles, you would not associate that color as a lady beetle. But lady beetles are predaceous. They do require a source of protein and carbohydrates and flowers at times. But both the larval stage and the adults are predaceous. Now, the top left photo is one that most people will go, well, a certain time of year is nothing beneficial about this. And that's a multicolored Asian lady beetle. And that's the one, if you see on the pronotum, that's that little shield above the head. It looks like kind of a fancy W. And if you turn the beetle upside down, it would look like an M. Well, that's real distinct identifying mark on that part of the insect called a pronotum. It's kind of like if the insect had shoulders. But that's the one that will invade our homes during the wintertime. So most people get really well, agitated when these beetles come in their homes. But the remainder of the year, they are beneficial. The one in the center on the bottom is called a spotted lady beetle. And notice it's not round, it's more oblong, it has a pointed abdomen. This one you'll find in early spring vegetables, leafy green vegetables, looking for aphids to feed on. A lot of people might mistake that for a leaf feeding beetle, a pest, but it's not. These are different species of lady beetles. Now, the larval stage is very strange on lady beetle. They're very, very tiny. And of course, they don't look anything, any insect goes through complete change in shape, complete metamorphosis. They will never look like the adults. So beetle larvae are strange looking creatures, very strange looking. This is kind of looks like a little alligator. It's got little spines on it, but it does start out with the colors, and those colors will carry through during the transition stage when they turn into an adult. So you can see this one has some black and orange and yellow. Those pigments carry through and will show up as the adult. But that's my hand. You can see how tiny that little lady beetle larvae is. That's a picture I took. And yes, a lady beetle can, in the adult stage, nip your fingers too. They can take a little bite. It would be a little pinch. It won't hurt that bad, but yes, they will bite, and especially if they feel threatened. So another strange object people might find in their garden and not know what it is, on the picture on the right is the pupa stage, the dormant stage. And the picture on the left is the lady beetle larva gluing itself. They excrete a liquid like a glue, and it glues them onto a leaf surface so they don't fall off. And these are very, very tiny. And so this is a transition stage. It's non-feeding stage. You're not going to eat any more aphids. And they're going to, it's very similar to a butterfly chrysalis. And the body parts start changing over into an adult, and the wings start forming, and it goes through complete change in shape. So insects are remarkable that go through all these different phases. And then it'll turn into an adult lady beetle. So again, we have well over 450, close to 475 species of lady beetles in North America alone. Okay, this is the firefly lightning bug. And again, there are many, many species of these. That's my other phone going off saying, reminder, I have a talk in Montgomery County. Okay, so lightning bug or firefly? Well, it's lightning bug should be one word. And I put that up there because if it was, bug was true a separate word, it would be a true bug. But in this case, lightning bug should be presented as one word. So if anytime you see the word bug and it's separate from the other part of the word, it is a true bug. But a true bug has a big tight mouth part. Now, lightning bugs, believe it or not, are predaceous insects. And so when you go out at night in the spring, and particularly after rain or before rain, they're very, very active. The males are going to fly around and light up the night sky. And there's a certain intensity to their light. It's a cold light. It produces no heat. So scientists study this for a long time, and this is how it actually came up with these little glow sticks that don't produce heat. So it's oxygen that combines with a chemical inside the body of the lightning bug that activates a chemical response and produces a light, but it does not produce any heat. The larval stage of these also glow. So the female stays on the ground, and she can recognize the number, the sequence of lights, how many lights, say, per minute, or so many seconds in the intensity. And because they're different species, they have to recognize each other to mate. So what happens, the male does recognize the female, and they're both get in sync, so he flies down to her. But the males can make a really, really terrible mistake sometimes, because this is what I call fatal attraction. You see the little tiny lightning bug, it's being eaten. The larger one is a female, and this is a Photurus species. They are predaceous on the males, because being a beetle, they have chewing mouth parts. So what she can do, she can mimic different species, the light intensity and the sequence of lights, how many. And so she's learned to mimic those, and it draws in a male. So that's kind of entrapment, I think. There'll be a law against that. So the poor male gets eaten. He thinks he's going to be in there for a hot date, then he gets consumed. So he becomes a food source. So no love loss here. So if you see that, I've seen lightning bug females. If you go out when the ground is damp at night, you might see the ground. You got to look close. The ground will light up sometimes from the females. Now, what do you think this is? This is the larval stage of a lightning bug. And it doesn't look anything like the adult, does it? Of course not. It goes through complete metamorphosis, change in shape. And these are ground dwelling insects and live just below the ground. They'll get into leaf litter, and they are predaceous too. They will attack other small insects. So they're very beneficial. At this stage of development, they feed on a lot of insects that live on the ground and spend a lot of soft-bodied insects, and snails and slugs included. But in my career, only twice in my yard have ever seen these. And one, I was out at night looking at the lightning bugs, females on the ground, and around the base of a tree, I saw this glow. But what they do, they don't have one area that glows. They have a segment of little cells that will glow up right below the top of their bodies. So you'll see a series of very small sequence of lights, and they just glow. So even the larval stage of fireflies will glow, and they are predators. So it's good to have. They would be considered beneficial at this stage. Honeybees, another one of our native Tennessee state insects. We call them native now because they've just naturalized here. They've been in this country since colonists came here and established themselves. So, but they're not a true native. But everybody can probably recognize a honeybee. But I was curious if anybody's ever had one of these called a swarm in their yard. I had one. But we don't have the tree anymore. But we used to have a big tree right beside, outside our back door. And one day I walked out, and swarms are really harmless. This is when there's a lot of overcrowding going on in a hive, and there's not enough food to go around. And so the old queen takes generally about half the population of the existing hive out to relocate and find a new suitable site. And so a lot of the workers, which are females, go with her, and she's smack dab in the middle of this conglomerate of could be hundreds and thousands of honeybees, and they're protecting her. And then a few of these will go out as scouts to try to locate a suitable nesting site. And most times it could be in a hollowed out area on a tree. Unfortunately, sometimes it might be in your home. They can get under siding or get in an attic sometimes. But then you got to call what we call a swarm collector. National Area Beekeepers Association, Middle Tennessee Beekeepers Association have swarm collectors, and they'll go out, and if they can reach that, they can actually just shake it and put a box underneath it, and they'll just all fall into a box with the queen. They'll take it back, and they'll have a new hive. So, but these are not dangerous, even though I knew that. But I tell you, I did not want to walk underneath it. And I'm thinking, what are the chances that this could fall? They generally don't do that. But knowing that, I still walked around this. So I had a big swarm. Swarm could last for a couple hours. It may last for a couple days, but generally not any longer than that. You may go out and call a swarm catcher. By the time they get there, the swarm is gone. So, but the good thing is that you have a good, healthy environment if you have a lot of bees around. So that's a good sign. You can walk underneath or avoid it like I did. Now, these are insects, very large insects, and the one on the top is one I raised. And this is a photo I took. It's a very rare photo of a female. This is a Chinese mantid. We don't encourage people ordering or buying these egg sacs, even though I've seen them sold at garden centers, believe it or not. You can see the picture on the right. I'll show you a large picture of that. Those are hundreds and hundreds, up to 400 or more baby praying Chinese mantids hatching out. So one young boy, one time, the mother told me he found one of these and brought it inside his bedroom, and he just kept it on a drawer for a while, didn't know what it was. And then one night, those little mantids hatched out. The next morning, the mother came in the boy's bedroom, and there was 400 or more tiny little praying mantids all over that house. Thing is that they can't migrate away from that egg mass. They will become cannibalistic and start feeding on each other, because as soon as they wake up, it's kind of like a hungry bear coming out of hibernation. They're hungry and they want to eat. And again, no love lost. They will attack each other and feed on each other. So, but this is that photo on the top is one I took of the female actually laying this. It looked like meringue. It will harden, but inside that she's pumping hundreds of eggs. So that's an unusual photo I took. So if you see this type structure, and most of the times they're going to be on a tree. I've seen them in fruit trees. I've seen it in the picture here was taken from a tree actually during the winter time, and they haven't emerged yet. When they emerge, you're going to see a lot of little holes where they chew their way out, and it's kind of their first source of protein. Again, this was taken in the fall, and this is a Chinese mantid egg case. Now, that's a close-up shot, and you can see there's a lot. They look like miniature adults. They're fully formed. All they got to do is grow, and the way they grow is to eat, and if they need to, they'll eat each other. So don't bring any of these in your house if you have a curiosity, or have a young child that's going, look what I found. I'll bring this in the house. Leave them outside. So we don't encourage the Chinese mantid because they will eat our native mantid, which is called a Carolina mantid, and it's very small. It's very tiny, and it's a small meal for a Chinese mantid. Their egg cases don't contain nearly as many eggs in the center there. And the European mantid is an introduced species. They're mainly kind of green. Our Carolina mantid can be a green to a gray color. They're darker coloration on them, but these are small mantids, and these are beneficial if they're eating an insect we regard as a pest, but mantids will eat anything that crosses their pathway. They're ambush type insects. So we don't really encourage, we don't tell people to destroy the egg nest because they're just part of the ecosystem too. But they will a lot of times get near a flower where a butterfly or a honeybee may be visiting it, and they don't hesitate grabbing anything for a quick meal. But if you see lately I haven't seen as many as I thought I would in the past years, but I hope they're not declining, but they could be, as most insects are in a state of decline. Another insect, now this is one you do not want to handle at all. These are different species of assassin bugs. The largest one we have is called a wheel bug because of this cog-like structure on the top, right on the back of the insect. And look at the picture on the left, on the lower left. They have an enormous beak. Now these are a true bug. This is a good example of all true bugs. No chewing mouth parts, but they have a beak. But a plant feeding bug has a very delicate beak. because it only has to pierce plant tissue, and they can easily do that. But to pierce the body of an insect, this beak could pierce your finger really easily, and it'd be very painful. You might actually have allergic reaction to the digestive enzymes they try to secrete into the body of the insect, and you don't want to do that in your finger. I've known a couple of landscape people that were trimming bushes, and unfortunately, they got bitten by one. They said it was very, very painful. It was just some local swelling, nothing deadly or fatal to you, but it would be as bad as the worst bee sting you've ever had. These are assassin bugs. They're just in the environment. Again, assassin bug is nondescript in what they like to feed on. They will feed on insect that we regard as humans as a pest, as much as they will feed on a beneficial insect. So they are a generalist feeder. They don't discriminate. They like to eat all insects. So, but we don't go out of our way to destroy these insects. They're a valuable part of the ecosystem too. Here's a picture I took. Actually, I was fortunate to get close. I saw a lot of commotion on the ground, and this really giant wheel bug had captured a grasshopper that was actually about its size or larger. And if you ever grab a grasshopper, they can just escape easy. They will try to bite. They have claws at the end of their feet. So it was, but a wheel bug can easily overpower even a prey insect much bigger than they are. Now, they're not going to risk damaging their beak by going to a wing, a stout wing or a wing cover. They're going to try to turn that insect. And I'll watch this large wheel bug, assassin bug, turn this grasshopper over on the side where it could find soft tissue to pierce it with that beak. And as soon as they do that, a lot of times they will, besides the digestive enzymes, they can paralyze an insect. So you don't want your lunch running away from you. So they have the ability to ingest some toxins, which causes paralysis in the insect. So careful, don't pick these up. Just view them from a distance if you can. But they're common, but sometimes rarely seen. Now this is a usual insect. This one actually has a little beard. Most county agents, the males like me, have gotten kind of lazy here. We always say we misplace our razor, but this is an insect that actually it technically does have a beard. Those are hairs, so it's a bearded robber fly. And most of these are native. They have really large eyes, and they're also a predator. And again, they're nondescript in what they like to feed on. So it's not unusual to see these maybe feeding on. They'll capture anything that can sting or bite. They have incredible good eyesight. And for an insect, their eyesight is very, very good. Short and long distance. Long distances may not be like 4 or 5 feet, but their eyesight is very good. It would be compared to a hawk or an eagle's eyesight in the insect world. Their eyes are very large and bulging, and they come in a variety of shapes and sizes. Some of them are very, very tiny and in the picture on the lower left, there's one actually feeding on a little leafhopper, and leafhoppers are very, very tiny. So some of them, their size kind of dictates the size of their prey. They generally will not try to find prey larger than them. The picture on the lower right is one actually feeding on a wasp, and wasp could sting this insect and kill it, this robber fly. But the robber fly has a knife-like mouth part, and as soon as it lands on a prey, it cuts the prey, the insect, slices it really quick to kill it. So, and it immobilizes the insect that they're going to feed on. And a lot of times they'll go for the head. So they don't want to be eaten or bitten either. So these, if you see these is another one. They're ambush type insects. They generally are up above and attack from above. So they fly down, but they'll be in a garden in those large bulging eyes. They'll watch for other insects. So they're generally good to have. Most of the times they're going to feed on insects that we regard as the pest insects. So these are called robber flies. The picture on the top right is actually a ground beetle. You can't see the ground beetle's head because it's buried inside that snail, and I call that escargot, land escargot. So ground beetles may accidentally come into your home. A lot of times it's the one on the lower left. All ground beetles are predaceous. They basically like to feed on soft-bodied insects. So they have a preference for snails and slugs. So if you see these, if you find one of these in your home, you can grab it by the back. They'll grab it by the head because some of them have really large mandibles and they can inflict a little painful bite. They're not going to draw blood, but it'll hurt. I was demonstrating that to a kid, and this ground beetle grabbed hold of my finger, and boy, it did hurt. And they don't want to let go, and they hold on. Now, if you look at the top left picture, again, these all beetles go through complete change in shape, complete metamorphosis. So this is again the larval stage, and it will not look anything like the adult. And so these ground beetles feed on insects that mainly spend most of their life cycle on the ground. But the one on the bottom right is called a fiery searcher because it is, if you can see a better picture, this is an ornate looking, colorful beetle. Big jaws, mandibles, has purple legs, the underside of the body is purple. It is iridescent green on top with blue colors in it. This one likes to feed on a lot of caterpillars. So a lot of times it's called a caterpillar killer. And this is an unusual ground beetle that will climb up a tree to find a caterpillar. So the others don't like to do that, but you can find ground beetles. If you keep lights on at night outside your house, outside a doorway, ground beetles will climb up. They know that there's plenty of insect prey that are attracted to night lights. So it's not uncommon to see a ground beetle that normally stays on the ground climb up a brick wall, or even aluminum siding, and wait for some insect to be attracted to that light, and they'll attack them. So they're active at night. They're nocturnal beetles. They hide during the day. So they're very good to have. So if you have a lot of hostas that are getting eaten up by snails and slugs, this is the type of insect you would like to have around. Various species of ground beetles. You can see the picture on the upper right, the mandibles on some of these, they're very powerful, very large. And some of them will like to feed on insect eggs. They like to feed on a lot of caterpillar eggs that they're laid in groups and clusters. So ground beetles are good beneficial insects to have. Now, this is an unusual one. A couple of years ago, I had several people send me pictures, and they said, "What in the heck is this? This is the biggest thing I've ever seen." They didn't know we had large beetles like this called the Eastern Hercules beetle. Now, the females, the one on the right, actually get much larger than the males. And they can be, they're kind of a drab color. They have some irregular spotting on them that acts as camouflage. But you see the picture there with that finger? This is the largest grub you will ever see. In some countries that people have lack good protein in their diet, they'll eat these grubs to supplement protein. These are huge now, and most people think with a beetle that big, they think, well, is it dangerous? No, they're actually harmless. All those horns on the males are only used for competing males, rivals. They push around each other, and the one that is the strongest wins the battle. They don't try to kill each other. It's who has the biggest set of horns and can push the other one off a log or something. So what do the larval stage feed on? They're in old trees that have died in a wooded area and fallen to the ground, and they're in an advanced state of decay. The wood has gotten really rotten and mushy, a lot of fungal growth, decaying the wood inside. You could stick your hand inside there and the wood would be like a sponge. It's interesting to find because this is what the larvae feed on. So most people go, wow, so they're feeding on wood. Dead wood, yes, they are. So that's what termites feed on. So most people don't know that there are a few insects that do live on a diet and get their protein and carbohydrates from dead decaying wood. And so why would we consider this beneficial? Well, they're breaking down that wood and helping to release the nutrients back into the soil where this tree is laying on. So if you find some of these, actually, this is a great little pet project, and you can actually order some large beetle larvae like this from people companies that raise insects and do it for educational purposes. And what you need to do is just keep a supply of moist, damp wood in there, and the beetle will actually pupate in that. And someday a big mature beetle will emerge out, then you can release it. So it's great for kids to study insect development. But these are mainly active at night, and most times in the city, people aren't going to see these. But if you live in a rural area and have some wooded area near you, keep your lights on at night, you might find that there's a large Hercules beetle. They're attracted to lights, and you might see one. If you see one, best just leave them alone. They're kind of a curiosity thing, but they're very beneficial in that they help to break down the nutrient load in dead, decaying trees. So valuable. This is one. I want to know if I could see you raise their hands. I can't, but has anybody ever seen one of these? It doesn't have a pretty name, carrion beetle. You know what carrion is, don't you? It's an animal that has died, and it could be roadkill, or a lot of times these. The first time I saw one of these, the beetles, there were 3 or 4 of these climbing in a shrub, and I thought, why are they in a shrub? Well, actually, there was a baby bird that fell out of a nest and died. So these will feed on any type of animal that has died, and they're used by forensic entomologists to study crimes and death of a person that body has decomposed. This is one of the first beetles to find a type of corpse. So carrion can be anything small or large. So if you see this is called American carrion beetle. It actually is a beetle. And the big shield-like area, which is yellow with a black spot, that's the pronotum also. So these you don't want to touch because they could actually have some bacteria on them. They've been feeding on a dead animal, but they're very beneficial. They're the kind of garbage disposals outside. They clean up a lot of animals that have died that are not fun to look at, but that have died in out of the way place. So these are not a pest, but they're very beneficial. They help clean up nature's mess, what I call it. So it's called American. Look for these sometimes. If you do, there's going to be probably an odor close by where there's some carrion. So, okay, friend or foe? They look very much alike, don't they? Well, one of these is very serious health concern. And one of them is called actually a blister beetle. And they get that name because if you touch one of these beetles, I'll show you which one it is. You need to recognize this. They can be on flowers, and they will also feed on they're a major pest of tomato plants too, in vegetable gardens. And they will feed on pollen and nectar too. And but they secrete a really potent chemical that if you touch it and rub your skin or on your face or your neck and all that, it'll blister. They're big, painful blisters, like you almost got burned. So the one on the right is actually a soldier beetle, and it's very similar to a lightning bug, but they don't have the light. And but they're beneficial insects, the soldier beetles. So you can see now, how do you tell them apart? They look so close. If you look at the beetle on the left, toward the end of the beetle, the abdomen starts to enlarge. And most of the blister beetles, some of them are really dark, gray looking, almost oily looking, all black and gray. Not a really pretty beetle, but they can mimic a soldier beetle. But you want to stay away from these. These are, believe it or not, very deadly and fatal to horses. If blister beetles are very problematic, and when they harvest hay out in our plain states in Kansas, Nebraska, where these beetles get into the hay and feed, and they may be baled up. And even after they die, if a horse consumes one blister beetle, it can bring about the death of the horse from internal hemorrhaging. So It's a very unusual beetle, very, very deadly to livestock. But soldier beetle is one that's very attractive. So it's good to know these apart so you don't mistakenly handle one sometime. Okay, here we go. Friend or foe? Well, these are stink bugs. And one is definitely not your friend. It's the foe. But the one on the right is the one you want to find in your garden. How we can tell them apart? They look very similar. The one on the left is called a brown marmorated stink bug. This is a new exotic invasive pest in North America. They will come, they'll overwinter in your house, find a way to come in your house just like a lightning bug, and they really stink. They have white bands on their legs and on their antenna and the abdomen. The wing covers don't quite cover them up. There's alternating dark and light tan bands on it, similar to some of the brown stink bugs that are beneficial, that are predators. But the one on the right, see the spines? That area is, remember, it's called a pronotum. It has sharp spines on it, where the other stink bug does not have that. They're more rounded on the shoulder, if you call it a shoulder. So what you want to do is distinguish between the two. Unfortunately, the brown marmorated stink bug is coming more too plentiful in Tennessee. I find probably about 20 or 30 in my house every winter. And it's hard to keep them out. But the brown stink bug is not going to invade a home. They're not structure invading insects. So the one on the right is what you want to have. That's your friend. So what do they feed on? Well, they like caterpillars, soft-bodied insects. So they're mainly going to feed on the sawfly larvae and caterpillars. And so that's your friend right there. They are very colorful. When they hatch from an egg, they can be a really bright red, which is kind of a warning sign. And their coloration changes as they progress from a nymph stage to adult. They have these warning colors, yellow and red and orange. So rarely are they eaten by other insects, even though other stink bugs would feed on them too. But that coloration helps them to survive and reach an adult stage. So if you see something very colorful like that on a plant, that generally is not a plant bug in your vegetable garden. They're beneficial insects. And the eggs, if you look close at the eggs, they even have spines. So if you see that, those are spine soldier bug eggs. So we want to leave those alone, let them hatch. Okay, real quick, we're going to look at a few wasps. And you go, wow, wasps. Well, wasps generally are beneficial insects, except if you try to handle one or swat at one, it stings you, you think, I'll never like wasps again. Well, if anybody works outside is going to get stung sooner or later. Don't swat at them. The wasp could care less about you as a gardener. So let's look at a few. The paper wasp, they're social insects, and yes, will they be aggressive? Yes, if you threaten their nest, because they're going to protect their brood, their offspring. And all wasps are born legless and mainly blind, so the food has to be brought back to them. So what do you think paper wasps, why would they be in your garden scurrying around on plants? They're not eating your plants. They're looking for one particular type of insect, a caterpillar. They feed on a diet solely of caterpillars. The female wasp will catch a caterpillar. So if you watch wasps, paper wasps, they come in all colors. Some of them are dark, some are really called red wasps. And they're scurrying around on a plant and they grab a caterpillar, they're going to chew it up and bring it back and regurgitate that and feed it to their offspring. So paper wasps, very beneficial. Just don't have a tendency, don't want to swat at them. So let's look at another one, a mud dauber. Now you can see the picture on the top right. If you don't like spiders, mud dauber is your friend. They like to feed on what we call orb weaver spiders. And they're generally a type of a grass spider. And they build these little mud tubes, which are kind of problematic if you have these, build them on a brick wall. And every once in a while you see a mud dauber tube. But they don't protect those tubes. And each tube is constructed by a single queen. So they will allow the presence of another queen close by, but they don't protect these, and they sting and paralyze spiders and feed them in, push them in there, lay eggs in there. Then the wasp larvae, and instead of feeding on a caterpillar, they feed on only a diet of spiders. So these are considered to a point beneficial, even though spiders are considered beneficial too. So that's a double-edged sword there. Okay, let's move on to another one. You may see in an area in a garden where you maybe got some disturbed soil, and you think, wow, is that a little mouse or a vole or a mole? What is pushing all this soil pellets out? Well, during the summer when we had the big cicada out flying around, the big annual cicadas, really large cicadas, soon to follow is a wasp called a cicada killer wasp. And a lot of people that have moved to Tennessee that weren't familiar with these, I would get calls and people said, this got to be that murder hornet. I've got one in my yard. What I said, no, you don't. We don't have I hate that name, murder hornet. It's the big Chinese hornet. And but we don't have these here. But we have a big cicada killer wasp, and they're pretty docile. They could care less about humans. You wouldn't want to grab one. If one landed on your hand, which would probably never happen, but you could put your hand on the ground, let one crawl up on it, and they don't feel a threat and just don't squeeze it. They feed on a diet of the large annual cicadas. So these have been mistaken every last few years. When the news does a story on those big murder hornets, I get calls, and I'm sure Carla has too. But that's the cicada killer wasp. So we don't want to bother them. We leave their little burrows alone. They burrow into the ground and they don't even defend the burrows. So once they sting and paralyze cicada, bring it back there, they lay a leg on it, then they leave it alone. So there's no mothering after that. So but here's another interesting one. Not a common name for it, but it's a parasitoid wasp of green June beetle grubs. And so it's called Scolia dubia. And we need to think of a common name for this because I don't like Scolia dubia. People think it is a foreign language, it's Latin. It's only Latin I know is insect names and a few plant names. So, but this one is easy to identify. You're going to see the females flying around. They have a dark body. The abdomen is kind of a reddish rust color. And on each side on the top of the abdomen is 2 yellow spots. So they're easy to identify. And another reason you can identify them, they fly really close to the ground, right, almost just barely above the grass blades. And they can sense chemically the larval stage of a green June beetle. And she will burrow into the ground and lay an egg on the green June beetle larvae. And then that's all she does. And then the wasp larvae kills the green June beetle. So that's considered a beneficial insect. Again, they're females. They're very docile. They will totally ignore you. So don't worry about. Some years you may see a lot of these flying around. That just means you've got a big presence of green June beetles in your yard. But these we consider beneficial. Okay, velvet ants. Are they an ant? Well, actually, they're not. The female on the left is a wingless female wasp. The male on the right is a winged male wasp. So only the males have the ability to fly. The females scurry along the ground. Now, never touch these. This would be the worst sting you'll ever experience your entire life. The stinger is almost half the size of their body. They're also called cow killers. They don't kill cows, but it'd be painful for a cow too. Farmers call them that. There are some that are orange, and there's actually a species that is white. The females actually are predaceous on other ground nesting wasps. And I've seen these go down into a giant cicada killer burrow to actually kill. She will lay an egg inside that burrow too. So you see there's species within certain families of insects that attack their own relatives in a way. So we don't go out of the way to destroy these. They're just part of nature. But if you see one, you leave them alone. The males are harmless. They can't, they're flying around trying to find the females, and they can't sting anyway. So if you see these, leave them alone. But we wouldn't really call them beneficial. A lot of times they feed on wasps that we consider as humans beneficial, but we don't go out of the way to destroy these. So velvet ants, again, they're not an ant, but they're in the insect order that includes ants, bees, and wasps. Okay, here's a one a lot of times I close the program with, but a lady called me one time and she said, you don't think I'm crazy, but she said, I think there's a small dragon in my yard. And I said, I think all the knights killed the dragons thousands of years ago. And so I said, I bet I know what kind. She said, this thing is huge. It's green. It's got horns on it. Looks like a devil. And I said, I think it's called a hickory horn devil caterpillar. That's my picture. This thing was almost 6 inches long. But you know what it turns into? It's real scary caterpillar. The big giant silk moth caterpillars turn into some of the prettiest moths, giant moths. And a lot of times in cities, you'll never see these anymore. They like to get out where there's a non-polluted air. They don't like all the lights and all that noise and traffic. So probably in Montgomery County, we're apt to see some of the giant silk moths. And so the adult is called a regal moth or royal moth. Beautiful orange and kind of gray colors, white tan spots on them. Beautiful, but rarely seen. Generally, caterpillars are rarely seen, but just because you see a scary looking caterpillar, most times it's going to turn into a beautiful moth or butterfly. So these are actually harmless. The spines do nothing. It helps the caterpillar from being eaten sometimes. Okay, we're going to run through this real quick. The beneficials that you would really like to have in your yard are green lacewings. And if we back up, that's the adult. And before long, believe it or not, you're going to start seeing the females flying around. They fly around when, I don't know how they exist without any good food source, but they start flying around during early winter and midwinter in Tennessee. And the larval stage is very strange looking because they go through complete change in shape, complete metamorphosis. And these are almost microscopic. They're incredibly tiny, so they can only feed on really tiny mites and aphids and little tiny soft-bodied insects. Strange looking because the larval stage had these fang-like pinchers, almost like a spider. But this is the most beneficial insect you will ever have, generally in a greenhouse or in your garden. And it could be a vegetable garden or flower garden. So where do they come from? Well, the female has this unique ability to exude this liquid that solidifies in the presence of oxygen, and it forms a quick stalk, looks like a plant hair. So it mimics plant hair. It's called trichomes, and she can somehow, this is almost like magic. Is quite an artist, can lay a single egg on this delicate strand. Here's a picture I took of some yellow nutsedge growing in a raised bed garden and a community garden. I told the people, oh no, don't pull out that yellow nutsedge. You got beneficial insect eggs from green lacewings. So look for these. They're very, very tiny, and they're always laid on the underside of the leaf. You will see these in greenhouses and any type of vegetable garden. If you have a lot of diversity and flowering plants, which I'm going to show you some you need, you'll attract these. So very beneficial. You will see the adults, but rarely are you going to be able to see the larval stage because they're extremely tiny in size. So we have 87 species in North America, and they feed on aphids, thrips, mealybugs, soft scale, moth eggs. I mean, a lot of small soft-bodied insects. Very beneficial. Using less pesticides, these beneficials are really susceptible to pesticide sprays, whether they're organic sprays or synthetic. So follow the label on any product you use. Okay, these are tachinid flies, friend or foe. Well, actually, they look like a filth fly, but they're not. And there are many species of these. They're your friend in a garden. And notice the circles, red circles. They've circled insect eggs, and that's the egg the female lays on the insect. So she is herself not a predator. She is attracted to pollen. So we need to have some good small flowering plants in our yard to attract these flies, which looks like a house fly, but they're not. So she lays these little eggs on insects, and the insects, they're very sticky. And so you know what happens next? The eggs are going to hatch. The insect larvae is going to burrow inside the body of that insect. It doesn't kill it, but they're going to feed inside, and then they're going to use the inside of that body, what's the left of the exoskeleton. All the inside has been eaten up, and they're going to finish their development and leave the body of that dead insect. So this is very common in a lot of insects I used to diagnose in the insect lab, looking at them under a microscope or a hand lens. I would see these little objects on other insects that we regard as pests. And most times I never see these laid on a beneficial insect. So this is what they do. Tachinid flies lay sticky eggs on the body of the other insect, and then that's all the mothering the fly is going to do. And so this is very common in landscapes and gardens. So again, you want a diversity in your landscape of flowers. So real quick here, people probably have seen these before, and you see the little circle, that there's a little lid on that one. These are actually parasitic wasp pupa cases made out of silk. These are not eggs from the caterpillar. This is where a little tiny braconid wasp, little tiny, the size of a gnat, laid 50 or 100 eggs inside the body of a big old hornworm caterpillar. And after they feed for a while, this is a picture I took where they poke themselves out. And again, they're blind and legless. So they're through feeding, they start spinning silk. They have a silk gland and they form a cocoon. So you see what happened to this poor caterpillar. I almost feel sorry for him. It's kind of said, I just don't feel very good now. Well, death soon follows, and then you're going to have all these beneficial wasps attacking more hornworms. So this is what you want in your garden. And less use of pesticides, you'll encourage these. So real quick, how could I encourage that the best beneficials, a lot of them are going to be attracted to an environment without you doing anything, but we want to provide food, water, and shelter in the form of flowering plants and plants that produce small nectary glands and have readily available pollen. And if you look at, this is a small example of various plants. All these have nectar that's readily available and pollen that's readily available. Now, pollen is protein and nectar is your carbs, carbohydrates. So that's their energy food from get to plant. And so they can feed their offspring too. So here we go. There's some bees feeding on the coneflower, but this is actually the reproductive parts of these flowers are very, very tiny. So they offer easily accessible food. Again, pollen, protein, and carbohydrates for the beneficials. And these are the type, you will draw all these beneficial insects. You will draw also good, healthy number of different type of bees, which are great pollinators in themselves. You'll draw in lady beetles that can feed on aphids. You draw in the green lacewings, the tachinid flies to kill the soft-bodied insect. You draw in a lot of parasitic wasps to kill a lot of caterpillars and other insects that feed on your plants. So buckwheat, if you want to supplement a great plant in your garden, a friend of mine, this is his buckwheat on the left. He does it every year, planted right next to his vegetables, his tomato plants, and he never has a vegetable pest problem. He's doing this for years. So buckwheat, buy it at your local farmer's market, just buy a handful of seeds. They get it in large quantities, and you say, I just need a little brown lunch bag with a 1/4 pound buckwheat seeds in it. Really cheap. You'll draw all the beneficial insects using this and incorporate. This is great in a vegetable garden. But any of the other flowers, bachelor's button is really not native here. It's native to Europe, but it provides abundant nectar, and it has nectar available before even the plants flower. So they have extrafloral. They have nectary glands that attract beneficial insects right away. So this is, and it'll reseed itself. It's a beautiful flower anyway. The cosmos, if you want something incredibly drought tolerant, don't put this in an area where you're going to water it too much and add any kind of fertilizer, because it'll quit flowering on you. This plant thrives on neglect. Beautiful colors, and you'll draw beneficial pollinating bees and a variety of beneficial insects, and have a beautiful garden, whether it's a flower garden or a vegetable garden. So you could outline your vegetable garden in these and buckwheat, and I guarantee you're not going to use any insecticides to control pests. If you wanted a perennial, and some of these are coreopsis, you can get these as perennial plants and summer blooming. And again, notice that the center of the plant, the flower, and that's what attracted to these tiny insects. Or beneficial insects have very tiny mouth parts. So you want the reproductive structures on these plants to be very tiny, with readily accessible pollen and nectar. Beautiful plants too. And again, this one is very drought tolerant. So all these plants tolerate drought. And catmint, not catnip, unless you want to attract a lot of cats, but if you put this in your landscape, you're going to really benefit the honeybees and other native pollinating bees. It's very, again, look, very drought tolerant when it's, and it will bloom and bloom during the summer months. Beautiful. So look at your nurseries, and this is a good perennial. Last one I think we want to look at is you can get goldenrod. There were 50 species of goldenrod. They can be a little invasive. So nature provides a lot of species of goldenrod for us, but you can get dwarf goldenrod, and it benefits it's a late fall food source for bees. And this will also the soldier beetle that looks like a blister beetle. The blister beetles don't go to these, so your plants goldenrod late in the year, late in fall when it blooms. And these do not cause issues with hay fever. Now it will bloom the same time that the ragweed blooms and yellow and all that, but these aren't problematic with causing sinus problems. But bees for a late food source when other plants are declining and food is a little scarce. It is scarce for insects, particularly ones that live in colonies that need to overwinter. So look for these type plants. And then once you get them established, look for the beneficials and some of the strange looking insects in the garden. And just know that nature is a great provider, and we're going to have to help Mother Nature because there's a serious global decline of all insects, and not just the ones that we regard as pests. Because a lot of the insects that feed on other insects, their food source is in decline too. So we got to do the right thing, and they won't ask for your help, but we need to lend a helping hand to a lot of these insects. This is an old cartoon. It says, I don't know what you're insinuating, Jane, but I haven't seen your Harold all day. And besides, surely you know I'd only devour my own husband because praying mantis are notorious for during the mating ritual. If she needs a little extra protein, the male, again, is food. So got to feel sorry for us males. You know, we have a hard time getting to our life on this planet, particularly if you're an insect. So I'm through here, Carla. So I hope you enjoyed this. There's just a world of insects out there. And I just tell people, be amazed at what's in your landscape. A lot of these are there. You may not even realize it until you start taking what I call a closer look. So appreciate the Montgomery County Master Gardeners, wonderful group here.
All right. Well, thank you. Excellent presentation. I had seen a lot of comments, but just one question.
Okay.
What kind of camera do you use to get those good close-up pictures?
Well, actually, I do have a real inexpensive little Nikon camera that get a camera. If you get a camera that has a macro lens setting on it, that means you can get up close. Now, when you approach an insect, you better move slow because they're startled, not just by your shadow or your size, but by air moving. They're very sensitive to the movement of air because they notice that if air is moving, that means something's causing the air to move. And it's probably a predator close by. They can't tell that you're not a predator. But the new phones, a lot of the phones like this phone I have now, there's a macro lens built into it. Now, my older phone here, this has a single lens and it's not good at taking close up. But if you play with your phones, I can get so close with my new phone because they have really improved. I call it a camera talking to. I don't call it a phone. I mainly use my new phone to take pictures. So the new phones.
Got one of them fancy new 3 lenses on.
So they're just unbelievable. They're some of the best camera lens. I don't know how they can make them that tiny, but you can. What I tell people to do is practice. Pick a leaf off a plant, get close to a flower, and when you're taking pictures of insects, you got to move very slowly and do that. And if you get close enough with a good lens, you can take a picture and then you can put it on your laptop and zoom into that photo, and the clarity is incredible. But it just takes a little practice. You don't want to startle the insect. Now, if you do want to catch an insect and release it, and you go, well, they're not going to be still for you. I put them in a freezer only for about 5 minutes. And of course, insects are cold-blooded, so generally it's not going to kill the insect, but it can slow it down. And then you can take a good picture, take it outside. The insect will warm up real quick and just take off. But be careful of if you're going to handle something like a velvet ant. I discourage that. A lot of insects, when they get too cold, they curl up in a ball. Then you can't get a good picture anyway. But it takes a little practice, but it's fun. So I'd have a contest. Take the best insect photos you can. You'll have some great stories. I'll guarantee you that.
That is cool. Well, Catherine, did that answer your question?
It takes practice.
Mhm. Okay.
Maybe.
Okay. All right. Now I have a question coming in just about hours. Says, will you explain now your doubling reported hours between CEU and meetings and volunteering hours? Okay. Last year, what we did is we essentially, used our meeting time like tonight. It counted as hours and as a CEU. Okay. So this year I want to go forward and I want you all to do your hours just like you normally would. Okay. Work on your volunteer projects and earn your 8 hours of CEUs. There hasn't been a determination by the state that we're going to combine them for a total of hours for this year. And we've got to kind of see how COVID is going to take us through the year. As an intern, you do not have to earn any CEUs, but you can still report those. Okay, so like tonight, you would get 1 CEU and you would get 1 volunteer hour for being logged on and in the meeting. So I can't say that this year, we'll be doing that, on combining those to make up your total. So just continue to work on projects, as you feel comfortable. I know a lot of people are, I guess, COVID bound, we would say now, and having to stay at home. Well, if you're in a situation like that, just call me and we can come up with ideas of things that you can do to earn your hours. It might be writing a newsletter article, for the monthly newsletter. You could maybe write a little article about a favorite plant or bug or pest, and we can post that up on the Facebook site. So, we may have to get, go outside the box a little bit to make sure that you all are earning your hours. But I do want to, say you can work in small groups, just socially distance. And most of our projects are outside work. And that leads me into one thing that Barbara reminded me of is we have 3 projects that need chairs. We have Dogwood Lane, we have the police station, and we have the extension office. So we do need people to step up and lead those projects. And let me just say, I know we've got a lot of new interns, but the way our rules are written out, you can't chair the project until you're certified, but that does not keep you from working on the projects. Okay, so we just need to have some people step up to lead those projects and gather the volunteers, let them know when the work days are going to be or what tasks need to be done so that people can go on their own time if they don't want to work in a group setting. So just keep that in mind. And if you're interested, you feel called to lead a project and you are a certified master gardener, we got a job for you. And interns, you'll have your hours in no time at all, and then you'll be eligible to chair those projects also. So, any other questions or comments?
Yes, I have a question. So is there a place where the current projects are published? or listed?
Yes, that is they're listed in the newsletter. And I gotta check with Paige and Tommy to make sure that they have our intern list and are sending out that newsletter to everyone. We have a Master Gardener Association website, and I don't remember the address right offhand, but I can email that out to you all. And we also have a Facebook site. It's members of Montgomery County Master Gardeners. That one is it is a private group for just our interns and our certified master gardeners. And then we still have the other Facebook page open just for Montgomery County Master Gardeners that anybody can see. And that's where I do a lot of, I'll put up information about the classes and workshops and things that we are having. So we'll make sure that we get you all on that newsletter email list. Just need to work on that. So
Thank you.
okay, you're welcome. Well, David, thanks again for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for the invite, and maybe we can do something down the road, another program.
Sounds good.
I got one
Sounds
called
good.
Man versus Spider. I did a takeoff on those TV shows, Man versus Food.
Yeah, there you go.
It's all about spiders, and it's not that scary, but it's got some unusual photographs. You're going, I had seen that and never knew what that was. And we'll think about
Okay.
doing something else later on. Get another hour of CU in. Double dip here.
There you go. Okay, well, I'm going to turn it over to Roger. If there are no other announcements, actually, Debbie Wortham, are you on? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Do you want me to mail the stack of checks I have, or do you want to try to get together in person?
I would love to meet with you. That'd be
Okay.
kill two birds with one stone. That sounds terrible, doesn't it?
Okay, you were kind of cracking up a little bit. Just give me a call. You've got my new cell phone number, or send me a message and we'll make a time where we can meet and I can give those to you.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Okay. All right, Roger.
Okay, David, great presentation. I want to thank you again. As mentioned in the chat box, we do need some project chairmen, but I would also tell you that we've been in contact with chairmen and we've got a list of volunteers from last year, and the chairman should be contacting some of the volunteers and setting stuff up. We'll also try to communicate via our Facebook page and send out emails and do this. And relative to the green wall project that we talked about on Richview, we still plan on having a kickoff to see if we can get that going. I will try to get that kickoff started. We were going to do it back in November, but COVID got in the way. We'll try to get something in the next 3 or 4 weeks and at least have a meeting to see where we might go with that one. And with that, I will bid you all good night and thanks very much. Stay healthy.
All right, warmer weather's coming, folks.
And thank you, Carla, for all you did here.
You're welcome. You're very welcome. Glad to see so many people on tonight. All right, good night, everybody.
Thank you.
So much.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, John Boy.
Good night, Mom.